Shalom, shalom. Man, in today's video, I'm talking about how your average person in Christianity, has no idea of what I'm gonna outline in today's video. Man, I'm gonna be speaking to the topic of white supremacy or Gentile supremacy, heathen supremacy in the religion of Christianity. Let's talk about it. All praise to the Most High Yah, Shalom. Thank you for tuning into another Ruach-filled, righteous episode. Today I'm back at it in them trenches, handling that kingdom business. Man, if we start from looking at some of the biblical evidence that we have, I'm going to start you off with Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. And it says, "How can you say we are wise, and the law of the Lord is with us, and we learned in its language and its teachings? Behold, the truth is that the lying pens of the scribe has made the law into a lie, a mere code of ceremonial observances." Okay, so, man, if you think in Western culture, which is not the same as Eastern culture, what has happened over the course of time due to these theologians and these philosophers, and we are warned biblically to let nobody deceive you with philosophy. What has happened is you have had a Western people hijack the book of an Eastern Semitic people and pretty much write it to conform to their culture, their practices, and they've shaped a religion called Christianity around it. If you don't believe me, go back and read or look up the book of Maccabees, First Maccabees chapter 1 to be specific, because most Christians are familiar with they, which means the followers of Yahshua, of the Messiah, they were first called Christians at Antioch. First Maccabees chapter 1 will open that wide up for you and expose what kind of, abominations took place at Antioch. And if you look at the location of Antioch, man, this is Gentile, this is heathen region. This is the area of Gentiles. Man, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, man, it is starting at verse 5. In Matthew chapter 16, starting at verse 5, it says, "The disciples reached the other side of the sea. They realized that they had forgotten to bring their bread. And Yeshua said to them, 'Watch out and be on guard against the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees.' They began to discuss among themselves, saying, He said that because we did not bring bread." But Yeshua, aware of this, said, "You men of little faith, why are you discussing yourselves that you have no bread? Do you still not understand or remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you picked up? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many large baskets you picked up? How is it that you fail to understand that I was not talking to you about bread, but beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees?" Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the false teachings of the Pharisees and Sadducees. So when you look at the false teachings, the false doctrines, this goes to show you that, these Greeks shaped in religion what you know is Easter and took away the actual practicing of what we are told to do in Leviticus chapter 34, which is keep the Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread. They gave you the Easter bunny, Easter eggs, golden eggs, Easter egg hunts, and stuff that's rooted in idolatry. And what you will realize is when you look at Greek and Roman culture, man, that stuff is filled with idolatry. It's their culture. The law was not given, the Torah was not given to the Greeks. It was given to Israel. Man, if you look at supersessionism or replacement theology, think about the word of the Most High Yah in its pure form before man came along, before these heathens came along and translated it. Why would you need to change it? But, Antiochus and men like him, King Antiochus, you'll read about in the book of 1 Maccabees chapter 1, wanted everybody to convert to this new religion. And you see many people conform to this new religion and adopted pagan rituals, sacrifices, practices, customs, and a way of life. The Israelites that conformed to this became what we know today as Hellenistic. Hellenistic means, in literal terms, in simple terms, to imitate that of the Greeks. This is how you have so many melanated people like myself today that are failing miserably at their walk with the Most High Yah because they're imitating the way of the Greeks when the Most High Yah told you not to follow the way of the heathen. Their customs are vain. The disciples were told by the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, to not go into the way of the Gentiles. Okay? If you don't believe me, man, let's look by definition. White supremacy is the racist belief that people of white race are inherently superior to people of other races and should dominate society. For one, I don't submit to that belief, but I do know the truth. So how is it that you have a Hebraic, Semitic, Eastern people, melanated, the book shows you, this is well before race. Race is not that old of a concept. But how is it that you have a people that we read about that was agricultural, Semitic, Hebraic, the Messiah himself spoke Aramaic, it is not in the Indo-European language family, which is not even of the culture of the people of the book. How is it that they have replaced the original theology or the original word? They've translated their culture into the text. That's why you only find the word Easter in the Bible one time. And then when you look behind the etymology of that word, you've got the Passover. Wait a minute. But your religion in Christianity, you don't keep the Passover. That communion that you're taking, is just a diminished analog. Analog means similar, not the same. Just the way when you look up the word Sunday in the dictionary, it tells you it's the first day of the week, and it tells you it is the Christian analog of the biblical Sabbath. That's not the same as the Sabbath. That means similar to. Doing something similar to what the Most High Yah has told you to do is not how you're going to inherit the kingdom. And that's why many people that are a part of this religion, that are doing all of this religious stuff, it's vain. And this is why they're told, part ways, for I never knew you, you worker of iniquity. Etymology of iniquity, lawlessness. But what you've had is, you've had a Indo-European people try to gain world dominance with their interpretation. It's the Greeks that gave you hermeneutics. What do I need hermeneutics for if the book says the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit, is the spirit that gives understanding and will teach you? You'll find out that a lot of these theologians, philosophers, they weren't commandment keepers. They didn't fear the Most High Yah. They submitted themselves to the pagan practices, traditions, culture that stemmed from their, original culture, which is being that of the Greeks. And a lot of these translators did a lot of translating. You go look at the definition of the word church in the English, and it will tell you a building for Christian worship. You look at the etymology of the word church, ecclesia, and you got a totally different meaning. This is how, when we look at slavery, a lot of people don't know that what they did was put Christian missionaries on these slave ships. So when the ship was leaving the regions of Europe and going to Africa, or going to a region of melanated people, what they did was convert the leaders of the melanated people to this new religion, making them Hellenistic. I'm saying stuff all that you can go back and look up. Okay, the names of the Bible, starting off with who in Christianity you say you love, Jesus. Okay, translation is not the same as transliteration. Transliteration is to hold the proper pronunciation. But when we look at, Matthew 1:1, the first time that the name Jesus is in the text, the transliteration is Iesus. What does that translate to in Greek? Hail, Zeus. Who is Zeus in Roman Greek mythology? He's their supreme deity. A lot of people don't even realize that if you are following the ways of Christianity and their teachings, not only is it supporting white supremacy, it's supporting heathen supremacy, it's supporting Gentile supremacy, and people don't realize the Torah, the law, wasn't given to the Jews. Why do I say that? Okay, if you go back and look, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, you go back, Bereshith, Genesis, you don't see no mention of the word Jews. You don't see the word Jews until Esther and Kings, Jews and Jew. You don't see those mentioned anywhere until those starting points. Torah, the law, wasn't given to the Jews. It was given to Israel, Yashriel. Okay? So you have people calling on the name, talking about they love Jesus. How do you get, if we're using proper word for word translation methods, translations, transliteration, etymology, how do you get Yahshua to Iesus? Whoever controls the pen can rewrite history, can shape people's understanding for future generations to come. And this is heathen tactics and supremacy at its finest. At its finest. See, a lot of old people are so set in their ways to where they didn't have access to a lot of the stuff that, man, we can research and pop out and crank out quick now. So unless they are willing to change and receive the information that's been here the whole time, it's pretty much a lost cause. You got to think about, you know, man, you're coming to the judgment seat of Hamashiach, the Messiah. And you're talking about, oh, I love Jesus, which the transliteration means hell, Zeus. You know, the reason I'm not saying it because it's a violation of the Torah to say the name. So I'm spelling it out. Okay? Think about, you're at the judgment seat of Yahshua HaMashiach, and here you are talking about you love Jesus. My name ain't no Jesus. You've been saying hell Zeus the whole time. Think about that. Part ways, for I never knew you. You don't know me, and I don't know you. Part ways. Well, what about the works that I've done? What about the signs, the wonders I done? You didn't do that for me. You did that in the name of Zeus. And this is how the sleight of hand of these translators, man, we are warned about the teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the doctrine, the philosophy, you know, the elemental rudiments of the world. The penmanship of the scribe is of the vain. Man, when you look up the history of Christianity, you know, and its birthplace at Antioch, go back and read 1 Maccabees chapter 1. Go back and read it to learn what actually happened. But, man, in Jeremiah, it says, follow not the way of the heathen. The customs of the people are vain. And then it details what in Christianity you call the birth of Jesus, which there ain't no biblical commandment or instruction or precept to keep such the birth of the Messiah, you know, to celebrate it in the way you fashion. But it's clear that we're told not to follow that tradition, which originates in winter solstice. The tree is a Yule tree. We're told clearly not to follow the way of the heathen. Okay, what is a heathen? Now we got to look at the descendants of Noah. So when we get to Noah's grandson, Japheth, and we start to look at, okay, you've got descendants of Ashkenaz. Christians look at Ashkenazi Jews as the people of the book. Them ain't the people of the book. Go read Revelations chapter 2, 9, and go read Revelations chapter 3, verse 9. They're not the people of the book. They're the synagogue of Satan. Dang, why does the book say that? Because when you look at other places, it says there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. Why? Because they're both descendants of Ashkenaz. Look at, when you're looking at in Genesis, the descendants of Noah around Japheth, go look at the Isle of the Gentiles. Go look at their dwelling place, where they migrated to. Man, you're looking at Europe. Man, Hebraic Semitic language is not even comparable to Greek, Indo-European language. Why do you think in English, we read from left to right? We write from left to right. In Hebrew, you write from right to left. You read from right to left. They're polar opposite. But what has happened is you've had Gentiles, you've had heathens. There's nothing wrong with a Gentile walking in the ways of the Most High. They'll be treated like a firstborn. But there's everything wrong with a heathen hijacking the book. And historical Christianity, it's documented that they adopted, pagan celebrations, which is clearly idolatry, clearly rebellion of the Most High Yah. So when you look at how you celebrate Easter in Christianity, go back and look at the deity behind that. It's not the Most High Yah. You're not doing that for Yahshua. You're not doing that for the biblical Passover, because the Bible tells you to keep the Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread completely different than how Christianity keeps it. So what has Christianity got you keeping? They've got you keeping their lawless culture, their pagan heathen culture. You know, when you look at all of the worldly holidays, okay, go back and look at the deities behind it. Your pastor's giving you a Valentine's Day sermon, Mother's Day. Ain't no deity behind Mother's Day. So that's a woman came up with that. Father's Day, but they'll give you every one of these worldly holiday sermons. Ain't none of it rooted in the Bible, while they reject the commandment of keeping the feast day. And the Bible says full well, man, you got to find a way of keeping your traditions only to reject mine. It's Gentile, heathen, you know, white supremacy at its finest. Man, you go back and look at a lot of these theologians that came up with all of this commentary. A lot of the religious commentary that you're reading was written by people that weren't led of the Ruach HaKodesh. You look at your Trinitarian doctrine, you look at your rapture doctrine. These were commandment violators. If you line them up against the book, these was commandment violators. These weren't people holding to what the book says. The book says one thing, and these heathens flat out rejected it. Why? To keep their pagan heathen religion. And the reason I'm saying pagan religion is because that's how it's described in 1 Maccabees chapter 1. This is why in Christianity, they call the book that I'm referring to of the 14 books, the Apocrypha, lost books. Wait a minute. No, they're not lost. You've been just deceived into not thinking they're credible. But it's outlining, you know, how your Christianity came about. You got to understand, you start to look behind Christmas and all of these other, it's not in the book. I can tell you, man, no matter what methods of deception they use to try to deceive people and whitewash the world, look at the imagery. Man, it's an abomination. You don't find nowhere in the book where the Messiah said, man, hey, man, I want this to be the symbol of the religion that I'm going to start, called Christianity. Man, take my picture. You don't see that nowhere in the book. That's a graven image. But in the Bible, it tells you that there was a father that was, pretty much brokenhearted about the untimely death of his son. So he created an image and people started to worship this image. Your image of Christianity, that picture is Caesar Borgia. Molten images, walking around with crosses, you look at that cross and pendants, man, that stuff's rooted in the Egyptian culture. But Christianity adopted it. And you think this stuff is worth something. It ain't worth nothing. It's a heathen religion that has been spread to the fort. Why do you think you've got churches that take missionary trips thousands of miles to other countries, but yet won't take in 2 homeless people from their city? You look at the amount of churches that there are in America, Google that, look at the current rate of homeless people, and you'll realize if every Christian church took in 2 homeless people, that would solve our problem. So why are you so involved or eager to go across the water and spread your Christianity? Why? Because you want to dominate the world with Greek and Roman heathen culture. That's why. When we look at, people are under the understanding that the Roman Empire fell. Did it really? Did they not stand it back up? Even in America? Go back and look at your eagle. What did the eagle mean in Roman culture? And another one, when you look at these countries that have an eagle on their flag or as a part of their symbolism, man, what you'll find out is, man, they're operating off of Roman and Greek culture. Their laws, their infrastructure. Why is it, Why is it that in America, you know, they have legalized homosexuality? When you look at Roman and Greek culture, homosexuality was a part of their culture. But it's a clear violation of the Most High Yah's law. White supremacy, Gentile supremacy, heathen supremacy, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing. And when we look at the word saying, beware of the penmanship of the scribes, it's a person who copies out documents, especially ones who employed to do this before printing was invented. Okay? A professional theologian or jurist to write, mark with a scriber. So you have people paid to insert. If you got the power of the pen, you can insert whatever it is you want into the text, even if it wasn't originally there. And for generations, it will pass on and spread and become the deception and the delusion that people are operating in. You got to ask yourself, man, when you are going to church on Sunday, where do you find this in the book? You don't find the command to keep Resurrection Day, the Lord's Day. But what you find out is a heathen came up with that. You go back and start looking at the Pope and Constantine. You start to realize that heathens came up with that, non-commandment keepers. Why? Just like the book says, they were committing abominations in the temple, worshiping the sun. Man, why did Constantine change and influence the people to keep a different day than what's in the book? Because he wanted them to worship the sun. It's not hard, you know. And the book talks about those that have a strong delusion. And the reason the Most High sends them a strong delusion is because they don't have a love for truth. They rather live a lie. And if the Most High Yah is not dealing with you, opening up your eyes to truth, man, you're going to stay in deception. This video ain't going to help you. But I know there is a remnant that will be saved. I know there's not many that's going to enter in through that Nate gate. But the gate of destruction, man, it's wide. Many going to enter into it. You know? So question is, man, who are you? Closer to Yah Ministries kicking it gun barrel straight.